Hello, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Winter day. We want to talk about questions that people ask me about how we used to sleep in the field when I was in the Army. Get right back with you in a minute. So welcome back. My Army experience started in 1986 at basic training, and it was my first experience really being away from home, and it was hot that summer. It was so hot, man, it was hot. Good Lord, it was hot. And I was sent on basic training to South Carolina, Fort Jackson, because it was in between. The Army was really trying to get me in. My dad was a soldier, and so I went to basic training in '86, and I went with a bunch of guys from Louisiana National Guard. And then after my senior year of high school, when I came back, I worked with a recruiter throughout that time, helping to sucker in a bunch more young men and women, and then I went off to AIT afterwards. So I went down to become an infantryman. But anyway, so let's get back to basic training, okay? And when I was at basic training, it wasn't my first experience with camping in the outdoors. I grew up camping most of my life in Louisiana, in the outdoors, and in other vacation locations. We used to go with a big family, so we always camped out from Lake Ouachita in Texas, and of course in Louisiana. Growing up in those areas, you tend to, as you go on big family vacation with a big family, you couldn't afford hotel rooms, so you camped out. So we did a lot of camping, and we didn't have camping cars back then. We would throw up we'd make it as comfortable as we could imagine on an individual basis, which meant, we had folding cots my dad got from the Army, and then you put up a mosquito net, because we would do during the summertime, and with a blanket, and that's how you slept, and that was pretty damn good back then. That was some good sleeping. Moving on to the Army, basic training, sort of the sleeping situation there was like a good experience. But what sucked was because we were issued these shitty little World War II pup tents, well, shelter halves they called them, because we only got half of it, and you partnered up with your what they call now battle buddies or battles. Back then it was just your buddy, your bunk buddy, because we had these bunk beds, and my buddy was named Briary, and he and we became really good friends during AIT, basic training, and I can tell you some more funny jokes about that too. But anyway, so I just remembered a whole bunch of funny stories from that time period. But he and we shared shelter halves, so we brought you had to wrap it all up in a little package they had set up to put on the top of your small Alice pack, and basically it was one of your blankets, because we were issued 2 blankets that we slept on inside the barracks. So you basically took your dust cover, they called it, which you wrapped that up inside of your sleeping mat, and then it went inside of the shelter half, all rolled up together with the shelter half cord and all the stakes inside of it and the poles inside of it, and that's on top of your medium Alice pack, when inside of it was, I don't remember what we had inside. I guess shaving gear and extra clothing, this kind of stuff. I just don't remember it. It was so long ago. But and then we marched out to the field, and I remember we stayed several nights in the field. I don't remember how many nights it was, but I do remember drill sergeants running around trying to steal people's weapons from. So you basically learn how to sleep with your weapon attached to you by the sling to keep that from happening. And my first experience basically staying dressed, camping, because previous to that I was just always be more comfortable, relaxed, and you'd dress down, take your boots off, this kind of stuff. But here you stayed dressed, okay, except for your top. It was hot as hell during that time period, so it was hot nights. But I used my BDU jacket as a pillow, and I slept on top of the blanket as much as I could, because it was so warm. And with my girlfriend, the M16, attached to my arms and all this kind of stuff, so I couldn't run off with it. But anyway, that was that first experience, and it sucked. It wasn't very fun. It was hot. It was uncomfortable, which led on to the rest of my military career. Then let's jump to my time in my first unit. There, it became a completely different situation. We primarily, depends on where we were at, what we wore, what we carried, this kind of stuff. We did have Arctic sleeping bags at that time, well, mountain sleeping bags, which was a down bag or poly-filled bag. I don't remember what it was, but it was quite big and bulky, and we didn't necessarily carry them in us because they would take up the entire inside of your Alice backpack, the large one. So what we did live out of primarily when we were out and about was our Poncho Liner. So and so that's why I use that with a shelter half. Not a shelter, excuse me, Poncho Liner with a sleeping pad. And then if we went to a static location where we had our gear brought, like our sea bags were brought with us, this kind of stuff. Which sea bags is basically a duffel bag with your follow-along kit, your extra kit like that you would need for different weathers, this kind of stuff like that. Then that would bring your sleeping bag with this kind of stuff, and then move on to when I go stationed in Germany. There, we had different equipment for Europe, and then there we also was Poncho Liners and our gear, but we also had a little bit warmer other gear also, like the bear suits you can sleep in, but they were big and bulky also. Yeah, and anytime you can sleep on a cot, you slept on a cot or on the ground in a sleeping bag, you did it, And then on to my last period of my Army service, I was at Fort Bragg, and then there, basically the same thing as before. It was, three-quarter shelter, three-quarter sleeping pad, and then a Poncho Liner. I remember one exercise, and actually the current Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was my battalion commander when I was stationed at Bragg, and I was in Charlie Company 2505 at that time, and we did this exercise, a big live fire. I think it was a combination of what they called the intensive training cycle, ITC. And this was over several weeks, starting from October into November. We did this. So we would go out, we did jumps, and then dry fire, wet fire exercises from the squad level all the way up to the battalion level. And that battalion mission we did was the very last one, and it was over, I think, a 3 to 5 day period. And we, everything from jumps to helicopter rides to assaults to hitting of bunkers, all this kind of stuff, airfield seizures, all the stuff that we would normally do as a battalion, we were doing it all in one exercise. And which was funny because we were actually, at that time, I think we were preparing for the invasion of Haiti. So a lot of stuff accumulated into that. You would do all this training that you didn't know about what it was leading up to, but it led up to something. So we always, those of us who've been in a while, we're always very aware of that and very wary of that. So he's like, "Whoa, we keep doing all these desert exercises. I wonder why. Why are we constantly going to NTC to jump in and hit do live fires and hit objectives there?" But I remember they told us that we couldn't carry our Poncho Liners with us, And so what everybody was doing at that time, we had this huge. This was when I was at Bragg. We had the new protective masks. And it came in a really big pouch bag that you had to carry on your side. And so what a lot of us did was actually we would take it and we would put all of our equipment on, and then put that around our shoulder, and then attach it to our leg or something like that on the bottom, so it wouldn't jingle or jangle around. And then actually I think we weren't allowed to even carry butt packs for that exercise. And so it'd be like a super lightweight thing. So it's basically very basic gear. So we had our 2 canteens. I had 4 M16 mag pouches, which accumulated to 12 magazines, plus a first aid compass pouch and another first aid compass pouch, which had dressings in it. So, and then our regular gear. And I mean, we wore polypropylene, warm socks. I had my Rocky boots because it was cold. It was wintertime. Brought a stocking cap with us. We stuck that in a pocket, and our gloves. And then I stuck my Poncho Liner behind my protective mask. So if I had to pull my protective mask out, I could pull it out and you wouldn't see the Poncho Liner. So, and I was spinning that information down to all my guys also. Listen, just stick it in the back because you may need it. And sure enough, we did, because we jumped in that first night, and then we had to hump. Actually, yeah, we humped to our primary objective, which was an airfield seizure. Apparently we couldn't jump in on that, but we could jump We jumped. I can't remember exactly how it went. Anyway, but we did. I think we did a jump and then a hump, and I think the hump was like 20 kilometers, like that, all through the night. We hit the objective just before dawn, which is pretty typical, and then we sat on it for a little while, and then we had helos come in and pick us up and move us on to. Actually, from there we humped over to another area where we were actually we ammoed up, refueled, with food, this kind of stuff. Got our heads down a little bit before some birds came in, picked us up, and flew us on to our next objective. And I think it was a 3-day period, is what it was, because then we ended up humping back to main post, which was pretty light, but it was cold as hell. And I remember seeing my first sergeant, he had snuck in his Gore-Tex jacket and his Gore-Tex pants. And he was a former bat boy, actually. He grew up in the bat and is a RI at Dahlonega. But it was funny. It was an interesting hump back too. We were all like sort of jovial a little bit. We were tired, but we didn't sleep for those maybe a few minutes here and there on the birds or whatever. And but I remember that first morning after the insertion, we were on the objective and we moved into our blocking positions around the objective so that follow-on forces or whatever, and just fictitious scenario happened. And we pulled our poncho liners out and put them around us. It was some sun, but it was some wind. It was cold, man. It was really cold, and just sort of, tried to get a few minutes of shut-eye, and that's what we did, when we could. So, and then of course we moved on to the next level. But this was pretty normal for us. It's something we did. We got used to it. So you got used to sleeping in these situations. So in the Army, we slept very light, especially units like that I served in. We slept very, very light, if you slept at all, and you learned to sleep on the command, basically telling yourself to sleep, and that's what you did. You slept, It's really funny because I read a book. I'm into science fiction, so I read the book, John Holliman. It's called The Forever War, and they had an ability to command their people to sleep, I think, in that book. I think that was the book I read that they did that with. I can't remember. It was that one or some other one. But they would tell everybody, basically, they'd shut the lieutenant or whatever, the head of the platoon or the company or whatever, would just put everybody to sleep, and they all slept, and then they woke everybody up, and then they were, whatever. But the Army sort of needs that too, I guess, in some ways. But we also need the ability to be able to snap to alert at any moment, and so I'm still that way. Someone can call me on the phone. I could be sleeping and wake up and answer the phone as if I wasn't sleeping. So you just sort of it's sort of built into you, drilled into you, and you become that way after. And it sort of rides with you, after all these years. You're never fully asleep, I would say. I haven't had a good deep sleep in a long time, and I feel it. But anyway, getting in outdoors, in the Army, it was a little different, and then I think nowadays I hear guys, talking about, they get air mattresses, these that they've gotten, and, so the equipment's changed a lot. The sleeping bags are a lot lighter now. Yeah, so, but depends on where you go, for what kit you have, and how much weight you're going to carry. So, and sleep is very important, especially in the military, because whenever you can get it, you need to get it, because you need to be on the tick, on the ball when it's time to move out and continue the mission or do a mission or whatever. So it's quite important. Now, I know for the past 20 years, you got units in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria that have been living basically a mission every night, because we work primarily at night, and then sleeping whatever you could after AAR in a day, get some food in you. Some guys trying to getting some kind of exercise, getting to bed, getting a few hours of shut-eye, getting up, starting it all over again, for the next mission. So this is not easy, and it wears on you. But if you're doing this in short increments, 3 months, 180 days like that, it's not too bad, I guess. But that's why the difference between special operations units and your regular units who are going out there and spending 12 to 18 months in a combat zone is completely different, because they're living primarily in these these FOBs, and they're doing all the security, but they're also and doing patrols, but they're getting a little bit more time to, I guess, to catch up. I don't know. I didn't serve in Afghanistan, so before my time. But anyway, that's how I did it when I was in the Army. Wasn't always that easy, but you know what? You do what you got to do, and so that's it. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I'd really like to hear what your experiences of what you guys did. I know it was different across the Army. I used to see tankers. I remember you see the tanker guys sleeping on top of their vehicles. A lot of guys slept on the vehicles who were in vehicles. We just didn't have them, you know. And when we did have them, we weren't allowed to sleep in them, especially in the training environments, you know. So you tend to push off to it and dig your little 18-inch fighting position, you know, and you sort of slept in that, you know, your pre-dug grave, I would say, you know. But yeah, that was it. I mean, it was, you know, it wasn't always the, you know, we did have a chance to sleep in cots sometime. We did an operation in Texas and Mexico on the border called JTF-6. I think they're all called JTF-6 for some reason. Maybe it was just us, I don't know. But and there we spent a week in training, a week in operations in one area, then a week in operations in another area. And then what we did is they had logistics that brought in tents and kind of like that to us, and then we flew out on helicopters kind of stuff. But we were doing patrols, live patrols along the border, capturing you know, the enemy basically, and setting up ambushes, and we were successful. We did capture some bad guys. I was personally involved in that, and so bad guys, people transporting drugs or whatever across the border. So, yeah, so that one time we actually had cots. But at the same time, we went to NTC one time, and we slept on the ground inside GP medium tents. We had the entire platoon crashed up in there. Now, when I was also in Panama the last time, this was for an operation, believe it or not, also called JTF-6. Very secret these operations were. They all had the same name. And there we had general purpose medium tents, and we put, I think we were sleeping, we had 2 platoons for 2 tents, I believe. Yeah, we had 2 squads in a tent, what it was. We had a little more space. We had cots, we had concrete floors. They actually came in, poured floors for us. We put the tents up. This all happened in the same day. I mean, they'd already come in, and I mean, within like 2 or 3 days, the whole battalion was set up and sleeping on top of concrete slabs that were the perfect size, general purpose medium tents. And then we had our cots in there, and we set up our mosquito nets and kind of like that. And then we were, I had actually, in that situation, I had an air mattress and my sleeping pad. So I put the sleeping pad on the bottom of on the main part of the cot, and then I had my sleeping bag with me. We all had sleeping bags with us. I don't know why we would carry all this stuff, but we did. But it turned out to be pretty good, because I took my sleeping bag, I aired my air mattress up inside of it, and laid it with the zipper down on top of the cot, and then I slept on that like a bed, and it was comfortable. I slept pretty well. That was my Poncho Liner. That was enough, and I slept very, very well. So yeah, that was pretty good sleeping there. What little sleep we did get, that was some of the good sleeping that was on that. It was hot there too, and we sweated our balls off. But yeah, the life there was much better than just sleeping off in the jungle, which I've done that also before. Now, when it comes to hammock camping, this kind of stuff, I never hammock camped in the Army. I have built some A-frames and used a poncho, where you use 2 ponchos. I've done that before, but I've never really hammock camped. I'm not a hammock camper. Even today, I've come out here where I'm at now, this past early fall actually, and Quentin and I, we did hammock camping. There's a video with some pictures of that where we put up the bashas. Uncomfortable for me. I'm just not cut out for hammock camping. Got 20 more kilos, 50 more pounds to lose, and maybe I can become a much thinner version of myself, and that might work out. But anyway, that's about it. So back to the end. Please subscribe. Please like, share with your friends and enemies, and leave a comment down below. And I hope you all have learned something from this little bit of military background of sleeping. Like I said, we slept anywhere, everywhere. when we could sleep and however we could sleep. So, and there's lots of proof out there. There's pictures, even when it rained. From Louisiana, 2 weeks of rain there, we all had monkey butt, and that was a bad situation when it came to just getting any kind of sleep. The first night it rained on us, we were sleeping in a creek bottom, because that's what you do in the infantry. You go to bad places to sleep. There was a dry creek bottom. Well, it wasn't dry creek bottom when I woke up and the guys were laughing, waiting for me to drown, because like the water had moved up already this part of my face. So, but you know what? I slept. We were so tired, and that was after the insertion. So anyway, that's it. Like I said, any questions, let me know. And I look forward to hearing from you. And you guys take care of yourselves, and talk to you again soon. And happy camping. Goodbye.